development of a man called Reverend Jackson. On yesterday, the New York Times carried an article about the difficulties in Brazil and the impact those difficulties might have on the rest of the world. And one is reminded that we're now living in an information-based, technology-driven society in which there are no borders of nations, but we are a global village indeed. For one but has to watch the stock returns here today and wonder what they shall be tomorrow in other parts of the world and understand the interconnection of the finances of the world. It is good that today we gather. The day is not bright outside, but the potential is bright inside. We gather here today to bring together people in conference over a period of 2 days. Some of the giants of America in the field of finance and concern. This man called Reverend Jesse Jackson is said to walk on water. And I heard him say, "Oh God, Percy." I am able to say that because I come from Harlem. I live in Harlem, and in Harlem we are proud of the people from our community who go forth into the larger society and become people of giant consequence. I say that he is said to walk on water because of the many things he's able to perform, acts of brilliance, things that have impact far beyond the expected boundaries. Reverend Jackson, some years ago, at the Commodore Hotel here in New York City, developed a thing called PUSH, People United to Save Humanity. That PUSH has evolved through the years to involve not just politics and social matters, but now economic matters. For all of us who came up in the field of politics and civil rights and with social consciousness, have come to realize through the years it is not enough to attain political power unless there can be joined with that political power, economic power. No one of us here today is so well known as is Reverend Jackson. I don't know any one of us here today, from whatever background we come, that has such possibilities of bringing together other people, people who often do not agree with each other, but who are attracted to that which he is doing. Ladies and gentlemen, while I may be askance in my comment when I say he can walk on water, let me just say to you that it takes a lot of practice to walk on water. And if you're going to walk on water on his circumstances, you must be able to go to jail on occasion. You must prepare, you must bring to you people of abilities, and you must prepare. Today, the New York Times carried an article. It was a long article discussing this conference and the progress that has been made thus far by Reverend Jackson. Tonight, on the floor of the Stock Exchange here in New York City, there will be a fundraiser to further assist in this effort. And present will be the President of the United States. That was helpful in getting the article in the New York Times. But an article that needed to be written. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you not Jesus Christ, not Moses, not Allah, but the Reverend Jesse Jackson. Please join me in prayer. Hope it's not offensive, brother. Straighten it out.
Well, in that context, thank you, John the Baptist. Let's give a great round of applause to Precious Sutton. We appreciate you so much. We've all enjoyed the growth, the life, and the legacy of the Honorable Precious Sutton, able, distinguished lawyer who was, among other things, the lawyer for Malcolm X, whose family is a freedom-fighting family of political and business nobility, who has worked to make New York and America better, who was the borough president of Manhattan for 12 years, now a distinguished broadcaster and business developer. But through all of that, an amazing line of credibility and trust. We call him affectionately the chairman because when he speaks, people listen. When he convenes meetings, people come. And he has that which people cannot buy, must never take for granted, something called credibility. Another big hand for Precious Sutton. We appreciate you. I want to express my sincere thanks to all of you for your presence today, for our sponsors and co-sponsors of this second annual Wall Street Conference. As the day goes on and as we process, it will become clear that next year we'll probably have to have the meeting in Javits Center, because we had to actually do a cutoff on registrants because of the interest in that which we are developing. I want to express thanks at the outset to our hardworking staff. They work so diligently to make this happen, and one who's in the eye of the storm, who did really the most to make it all happen. A hand for Chi-Chi Williams, shall we? And her working partner in this process from the umbrella group, Harold Levy. Harold, stand. I do want to indicate, as we work on building an infrastructure these next 2 days, that we are broadcasting live over our site today and tomorrow. And as we follow through on the process, we do have 2 sites. One is www.rainbowpush.org. Another one frequently used is www.jessejacksonjr.org. That's an unpaid commercial. As we move toward the celebration of Dr. King's 70th birth date, and this has become a kind of day to assess where we are in America in the quest to heal the breach and the quest for social justice. I want to thank those business leaders. I want to thank Maceo Sloan. I want to thank, stand up, Maceo. I want to thank Gene Duffy and the Jim Hill and those who at the very outset came together on the belief in each other and in this possibility of building bridges to connect Wall Street with the rest of America and to expand the market. I want to express my thanks to friend and brother beloved, Weldon Latham. Weldon, please stand. He's done so much to make this project successful. And I suppose I'll say it over and over again the next 2 days that we are here to build bridges. And while there's a delegation here of African American and Latino businessmen and women, there's also a delegation here today from Appalachia. The Appalachian delegation to stand. Stand up, Appalachia. Give them a hand. And I know y'all feel a little awkward. I want all y'all from Appalachia to come out the back row, come up here. Y'all come on up here because you just look right out of place, y'all. Y'all don't have to go to the back of the bus like we did. Come on, you can actually start on the front. Give them a hand. And in Adam Powell fashion, as the meeting begins and people are all focused, in comes Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. Give him a hand. And that's one of the favorite tactics of Adam Powell when they would get ready to have a big community meeting about him or against him. He would wait till the crowd gathered and the speaker got up to speak, and he would, at that moment, walk right down the center aisle and all the attention. That's called an Adam Powell. The thrust that you'll hear over and over again is access to capital. Say access to capital. Access to capital. Access to capital. Because in some sense, we'll talk about it, is in the 4 stages of development in America to make America America for all of its people, to heal the breach. If the first stage indeed was to end slavery and economic arrangement, if the second stage was to end legal segregation, a divisive arrangement, the third stage was the right for all Americans to vote. The fourth stage is access to capital. In some sense, we have been so focused on the trauma of the black and white of the matter. So often it's diverted our attention away from the wrong and right of the matter. Not that the black and white has not been valid and real, but it's been used like the bull and the matador often to divert attention. So often we end up running from sideline to sideline, east and west, rather than goalpost to goalpost, north and south. You can get 1,000 yards running east and west and be very tired, but there are no points sideline to sideline. The points are goalpost to goalpost. And if it's just black and white, then the black can never be a part of a majority in an east-west paradigm. But if it's north-south, if it is indeed the surplus culture over and against the deficit culture, the mission is indeed to transport capital to all Americans, then those who are in the deficit culture in that coalition take on a new strength and have a new power and a new potential. And that is why Appalachia and Harlem must find common ground. There are 2 bridges that connect this great island called Manhattan. One extreme there is Wall Street, the other extreme there is Harlem, connected by 2 bridges. We want to erect 2 bridges, one from Wall Street to Harlem as it symbolizes urban America, another bridge to Appalachia as it symbolizes rural or mountain America. Let the record show that the gap between Wall Street and Appalachia is greater than the gap between Wall Street and Harlem. And we must build bridges because on the other side of both bridges, there's money and market and wealth and the potential for prosperity. And therefore, it's a mutually beneficial proposition. So we're talking these 2 days about shared growth. There are no budget deficits. There are no communist threats. And yet, we have more wealth in the hands of a few and more underserved markets, more underutilized talent, more untapped capital. We want to tap into that capital tap into that potential, tap into those communities. It's amazing how when there is a deficit in Brazil, it captures our attention in economic terms. When there is a deficit in Asia, the crisis with the Asian tiger, it captures us in economic terms. When there's a deficit in urban or rural America, we see it either in racial terms or don't see it at all. But a deficit in underutilized American talent, a deficit that grows out of locking our youth up rather than lifting them up. To put 2 million Americans in jail, 500,000 more than China, and for 3/4 of them to be youth under age 30, will have a longer term, a negative consequence on America than whatever is happening in Brazil or Indonesia or Taiwan or South Korea. And while we are right to address the problems in Brazil or Taiwan or South Korea, it is just as right to address the crisis here or wrong not to address it in stark, economic, as well as in moral terms. And so we have challenges here, and we have opportunities here. We seek to build for the Rainbow Push Wall Street project and infrastructure across the country. And all of us have lots of work to do and lots to learn. I'll talk more about it today, but it's just amazing. I talked with one minister this past Sunday who admitted that after we talked about the finances of the matter, that his church had $800,000 in CDs since for the last 9 months. And most of his members would choose a bear lottery market over a bull market. They have more confidence in the lottery market than in the bull market. Obviously, they do not know any better. And therefore, mass education is in everybody's best interest. Someone said, and I close, that money does not grow on trees. And that is not true. Money does grow on trees if it's planted in money mud. Say if it's planted in money mud. In money mud. If you plant it in a lockbox, it will not grow. You plant it in CDs, it won't grow much higher than a shrub bush. But there is some fertilizer, there is some money mud wherein money really can grow. Say if it's planted in money mud, it will grow. It's amazing how the poorest district in Georgia is the highest lottery county in the state. Confidence in the lottery market. One ward in Chicago, $70 million in the lottery, plus the boats. Plus the boats. Confidence. Well, one thing is that the folks in the lottery have reached out to them because they know they have money. And the markets have not reached out to them because they don't appreciate their money. And so that is understandable too. But we intend to change that in these next few days. We're going to organize, among other things, 1,000 churches this year that will start investment clubs and consumer clubs and begin, Jim Hill, to what we call the disciplined dollar and targeted investment in stocks. That is the process of mass education as we seek to build the bridges. Before we begin our workshops today, and they will be outstanding workshops, our first session is really with some basic business leaders who will talk and share with us for a bit on kind of 2 points. One, challenges and opportunities in the underserved marketplace. Underserved with underutilized talent and untapped capital. Say challenges and opportunities in underserved markets, underutilized talent, and untapped capital. The challenges part simply is what are the constraints? What are the impediments? On the other hand, what are the opportunities? I suppose it was classically expressed last year before I bring on Brother Zuckerberg from Goldman Sachs to begin to address this in some measure, is that we had my friend and Brother Donald Trump on the panel last year. And I asked Donald in that dialogue, Donald, what is missing? You are the #1 builder in Manhattan, on the south end of Manhattan. Only you and Michael Jordan occupy airspace. Give a hand to Donald Trump. I give him that extra play because I'm trying to get some more free space on Wall Street. I'm really advertising. And I said, Donald, what's the problem? You are the biggest builder on the south end, but you don't have much building on the north end beyond Central Park. Now, I know Donald to be a decent and a fair man, so we need not ascribe to that any pejorative motive of race or nothing. What's happening? So Donald said, well, no problem. I said, it got to be a problem. Same island, between the same 2 rivers, same 2 bridges, and you invest on one side, not the other. He said, well, it occurs to me that I get better incentives and tax deals to invest on one side than the other. Now, if that be the case, stick a pin right there, because we must broaden the base of the incentives and reduce the risk. And that becomes, if the issue is lack of incentives and not enough hedge against risk, then that's a good place for the conference to start. And so for Goldman Sachs, as you look at the marketplace and look at the market and look at talent and look at the potential wealth, I want Roy Zuckerberg to come first and speak just in some measure, a few moments about what he sees as challenges and opportunities in expanding the marketplace. Roy Zuckerberg.
Thank you, Reverend Jackson. The first thing I'd like to say is, in thinking about this today and what I was going to say, the first thing I'd like to say is what an enormous service you provide by doing these conferences and heightening the awareness and causing all of us to think more and more about the challenges and opportunities. So I salute you, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart, for what you do. I also want to say that I'm here today as chairman of the Securities Industry Association, which is what it is. It's the association of 800 securities firms. And we try to provide standards and policy for the industry. And so when I speak to you today, in part, I talk as that capacity as well. Let me start off by saying that I think the contribution SIA has made the last few years is pointing out opportunities to the member firms, to the securities firms in our industry. I think you can try to get people to do the right thing, and you can try to teach people what is the right thing, and I think people intuitively know what the right thing is, but it doesn't happen in an industry like ours as quickly or as you want it to happen unless people see the opportunity. And the SIA has spent some time and money. We created a video which was shown at this conference last year, and we created a brochure which has been broadly distributed, and it really deals with the opportunities that exist in servicing the diverse community in this country, and the underserved community, as Reverend Jackson calls it. Now, there are, within that, several programs and things we've done, and I think that the problem is that I don't think the results have been as good as the effort. And I think enormous effort has been put forth by both firms and the industry association. And I think to date, although we've made progress, I don't think we've made the sort of progress that we all anticipated or we hoped we would make. At Goldman Sachs, I made a list of, I had someone make the list for me. We have some of our people here today as sponsors. But we made a list of things we've done in the last few years, and I think the puzzle is, in some ways, is why we haven't had better results. But we have these MBA. I'm going to read some of this, so you all forgive me. But we have a minority MBA fellowship program. A couple of years ago, our executive committee approved a pilot program to award Goldman Sachs MBA fellowships to minority business students. Full tuition for both years of business school. We've had hundreds of on-campus recruiting events at schools all over the United States, both undergraduate and graduate programs. Minority MBA dinners. Once again, during the academic year, the firm hosts a series of events for Hispanic and African American students at all of the firm-wide graduate business schools that we recruit at, which is something in excess of 40. The National Black MBA Conference. For several years, we've participated and sponsored the conference. It's been a sponsor. The National Society of Hispanic MBA Conferences. Minority conferences at Columbia, Wharton, Harvard, Stanford. It goes on and on. Women's conferences. Women MBA receptions all over the country. Then there's some specific summer things we've done. Fellowships, minority MBA summer events. Toigo Fellows, which is something created by the Robert Toigo Foundation. This goes on and on. Women's Summer. Now, there's a couple other programs we've initiated, which I think are also terrific and I want to speak about. And one is called the Goldman Sachs Scholars Program, which is directed at high school students. And this year we've contributed several $100,000 to two organizations which we think function very well in this area. One is A Better Chance. The other is PrEP, High School Students, which is a New York City-based program. And I think we feel that if we can reach out to the communities and get to people before they get to business schools and before they get to colleges and get to people at the high school level as well, that we're providing a terrific service. Then Goldman Sachs Scholarship for Excellence. In 1994, the Diversity Committee established this program at Morehouse College. In '95, we added Spelman, Florida A&M, and Howard University. And we've awarded scholarships to a total of 19 students at these schools. Once again, I think we feel very good about this. Now, as I said, we're very proud of a lot of the things we've done and the money we've spent, the time we've spent in trying to reach out. But we've also done a program in the last few years of reaching out to the community, where we had last year 9,000 people at Goldman Sachs, which is a population of about 13,000, who took a day off to go out into the community and work in different programs where we kind of reach out. And I think what we're trying to do is get to a lot of people within the firm and teach them the importance of being part of the community. And they went to a lot of schools, poor schools, in some of the tougher districts in and around the city, habitat, building houses for people. There were a lot of terrific programs that this was all a part of, and I think what we were very pleased at is over 9,000 people. I don't know what the number was this year, Bruce. In excess of 10,000 people at our firm out of a population of about 13,000. So we feel very good about that as well. So I think in the future going forward, the thing that I'm the most enthusiastic about is getting firms, which are very economically driven, to see the opportunities that exist by servicing the underserved community. And I believe, and there's lots of statistics that have been done on this. This video, which I spoke about, which I mentioned, which is a 7-minute video, and I hope you all get a chance to see it. The SIA has copies of it. I think is a terrific opportunity to see the economic impact that it can have on any one of our firms by servicing this community. So thank you very much. I hope those comments give you a little bit of insight on what we're doing.
One of the recurring themes you will hear over and over again is the need for more education and early intervention in education, and the price we pay for not investing on the front side. And so more and more companies are moving toward education, or reaching out, or recruiting, or retaining. And so a part of our mission, therefore, is to make the case over and over again that in the end, all schools must be choice and all children chosen. We do not serve ourselves well by calling a few chosen and leaving the masses unchosen, because it results in, among other things, the last 10 years, since we've taken urban development money to house the poor, to build massive jail industrial complexes, we now simply have urban development money being used as a rural economic development plan, building jail cells for houses for the poor. Talking about the crisis in Brazil, try that crisis as they graduate 5 years back into the public sicker and slicker because they're untrained and because they're sick. And so building bridges, a plank in that bridge is the question of making education work for all of our children. One of the companies that assumed the most responsibility as we raised the idea of bridges to Wall Street and not just walls was that of Travelers and the role of that of Sandy Weil, which is now legend. Sandy, again, is one of the co-sponsors this year. And representing him today on this panel is the CEO, Jay Fishman. Come forward, will you please?
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Once again, good morning. Good morning. There we go. Thank you. Reverend, it's a pleasure to be here today and participate in this event in a substantive way. The events of the last few days in Brazil and the last few months should remind all of us that we indeed are the global goose. And protecting that goose and making that goose available to everyone that shares in it and participates in it and creates it is just critical for the fabric of our country over the long term. It can't be at that goose that half the people walk away hungry and half the people walk away full. And it is not only our obligation in the sense of the right thing to do, but it is critical for the fabric of our society over the long term for us to be here and participate and support this event. So thank you for inviting us. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's really a pleasure to be here. Actually, and hopefully we can be of some help to you next year, I actually feel very lonely here today. Looking through the sponsors and the attendees, there is no other insurance company here, I don't believe. And, I apologize. Okay. Well, together, we must take on for next year the obligation to populate this audience with one of the most profitable industries in America. And it should be represented by health insurers and life insurers and property casualty insurers, and we have a lot of work to do together. And lastly, just before a couple of comments, I noted with some interest your observations about what you could tap into in this country, the different things you wanted to tap into. Our ticker symbol on the New York Stock Exchange is TAP, and if in fact we can be of any help to you in tapping into the things that you have on your agenda, we'd be pleased to do so, sir. We run a business that's just extraordinarily long-term in nature. We are a 135-year-old company that understands that our success really is based on two key principles. The first is that we seek to invest in customers and agents and employees who are dedicated to building sound communities in which they live and work. And we really do understand that our business is based on protecting the dreams and the aspirations of the people who invest in themselves and in their families. These are good customers, these are good people, and it really is regardless of where they live that they are good customers. And it's this view, this open-minded view, that creates an opportunity for them as well as for us. It really is good business for the both of us. Second, we are constantly in search of the next generation of new customers. When you are a 135-year-old company, you realize that we are indeed planting the seeds, perhaps in the money mud, for the future of our organization. And frankly, one of the obligations that means is providing properly priced insurance products for the 21-year-old recent college graduate who wants to buy a home and needs to buy a car to get to work. We do understand if there's no homeowner's insurance, there is no home. And if there's no home, there's no family. And we understand that if there's no automobile insurance, there's no car, and perhaps that individual can't get to work. And perhaps most importantly, it also means providing real employment opportunities for that 21-year-old so that that person can dream and aspire and begin to build his or her own independence and therefore take on the obligation of reinvesting in their community. So when we look at ourselves in that long-term context, we recognize that it's the young people, the emerging people, the people coming forward who are indeed our business of tomorrow. And really, we think that our business is based on making these opportunities available, candidly, to everyone. The only important factor being where they are and where they're going, not in any sense where they've been. And it really means that understanding that doing today's good business means identifying tomorrow's good business partners. And that's customers, and in our case, independent agents and employees, and giving them a chance to grow with us, to give them a chance to grow in their own lives, and to stick with them for the long run. The question that you have the right to ask us, of course, is how are we doing? How are we doing in applying these principles in minority communities? And candidly, the answer is we're trying hard, but we also know that we can do much better. So in that regard, we've made a long-term commitment, recognizing the long-term company that we are, to minority communities across the country. Certain specifics. Right now, we're actively involved in increasing the availability of homeowners insurance in 7 major urban centers across the country, and we are succeeding. In Washington, D.C., for example, a troubled insurance market, our minority agent development program has resulted in us achieving a 16% market share of the urban center. That's over 27,000 homeowners insurance policies, and to put that in some perspective, that's over 4 times our overall national market share. It's a record that we're proud of and we intend to keep working on. And we did that by investing in people and in mentoring and in training and providing these independent agents in these difficult communities the opportunities to grow. And we are actively looking for more minority agent prospects every day in this city and most other major centers across the country. And as part of Citigroup's $115 billion, that's billion with a B, Community Reinvestment Plan commitment, we're committed to substantially increasing the availability of commercial and homeowners insurance to low and moderate income customers in urban markets. And most importantly, to your point, sir, that includes educating customers in our products so that they can make smart choices and seeking opportunities to invest in independent agents' businesses so that they can better serve the minority communities. And in that regard, we'd like to point out that the Travelers' commitment to participate in this Community Reinvestment Plan is indeed a voluntary one on our part. And to our knowledge, it's the very first time that an insurance company has participated in a Community Reinvestment Act commitment of this size. The commitment really underscores the unique benefits that will be available to urban markets as a result of the Travelers Group Citicorp merger. The combined product strength of this new entity allows us to respond to urban needs in ways that no other business enterprise is able to. And candidly, we believe it is our responsibility to share the benefits of our organization with the communities that help us succeed. So we're trying hard to put our money where our mouth is, not only because it's good business, but it's also the right thing to do. And lastly, our sister company at Solomon Smith Barney is deeply involved in the Black Enterprise Fund. That is a fund that has been raised to invest in and support minority-owned businesses across the United States. And we at Travelers Property Casualty, as well as our sister company, Travelers Life Insurance, are substantial investors in that fund. And we feel wonderful about the opportunity to do the right thing and to be profitable. Our commitment to the minority community and the goals of this Wall Street project are really substantial and they're long term, and we are pleased to help in any way that we can and be supportive in any regard. We're proud to be here and pleased to be a part of this event. Thank you, sir.
I want to express our thanks to Brother Frischman. When I was growing up in the old country down in South Carolina, Grandmama taught us that we were not poor we just didn't have any money. We were not poor, we just didn't have any money. In many ways, it kept us from holding our heads down, developing a complex about what we didn't have. On the other hand, it insulated us from certain amounts of our pain, so we grew accustomed to having little and doing a lot with it. And that is good for a short-term survival season. One should not make it a lifetime habit of survival skills and develop a poverty complex. There is life beyond poverty. Say there's life beyond poverty. Now, my point is that corporate America and our government has gotten used to looking at deprived urban areas as a spectacle. We built it into our tax structure. We've gotten used to watching Appalachia abandoned. You hear the word Appalachia, you hear the same language descriptions, the white side of black. We've gotten used to schools in rural areas built in the 1940s and children growing up alienated. We want to break those habits. We want to create a new mold. We want to operate outside of this box. So again, when Brazil is in crisis, we make adjustments. But when rural and urban America, when Appalachia and Harlem are in crisis, we've accepted that as a part of the standard operating procedure. We intend to change that procedure and change that standard. Mel Ford, for example, one of our car dealers, in his own way, a very brilliant and able businessman, in true capitalistic creative style, says that many car purchasers simply don't have, well, they're not quote unquote credit worthy due by conventional standards. But they still have to have cars, but they're not credit worthy. Credit worthy means that they cannot borrow X amount of money, or they cannot get the several months you can afford to get behind in a conventional situation. So his idea has simply been to do what? Rather than sell them, lease them. And rather than having a 3-month period for getting behind, 1 month and you lose the car. He has simply changed the frame because he knows even the poorest folks must have a car. So what Mel has done is developed an investment grade company. He is now looking for Wall Street investors to partner with him. He's going to build a whole new industry off of people who have a short leash on their risk, and an industry around people who need used cars. And so there is no talent deficit in the underserved markets. There is an opportunity deficit, but there's also capital in that market as well. I want to express thanks to Brother Fishman for the commitment of his company to help us build that bridge. Before bringing on Roger Ailes, the Chief Executive Office of the Department of Labor has just come in, Alexis Herman. Give her a hand, please. Big hand for Alexis Herman. One of my odd fellow partners, I'll bring on now. We wrestle with these issues over and over again of how to deal with the challenges, extend the market. He is a good friend, genuine, authentic, 14-carat right-winger. He's 14-carat right-winger. He heads Fox Network News, and he is trying to give me a right wing, and I'm trying to give him a left wing because it takes 2 wings to fly. But he has a sincere commitment to opening these doors and building these bridges, and he is fair. And he's here to share and to listen. Brothers and sisters, Roger Ailes, President of Fox Network.
A little before Christmas last year, the Reverend Jackson called me. He said, on Christmas, I'm going to go to the Chicago jail. I said, oh, God, not again. He said, no, you jerk. I'm not going in the jail. I'm going down there to feed the prisoner. So we sent a crew out and said, Jesus, I thought he wanted me to get him out. I didn't know what the heck he wanted. Actually, I have great respect for Reverend Jackson. I met him back in 1968. I was executive producer of a show called The Mike Douglas Show in Philadelphia. Reverend King was killed, and Jesse came and did a television special with us back in those days, and he and I have had a continuing dialogue through the years. I keep telling him I can get him elected president, but he's going to have to run as a Republican. He's thinking about it too. I got news for you. Don't any of you kid yourselves. I run Fox News. Rupert Murdoch asked me to build a worldwide news channel, and we started about 2.5 years ago. We're in about 38 million homes now, and we just passed MSNBC yesterday in terms of eyeballs on the screen. We're doing pretty well. So. My inner circle at that group, I got a finance guy who's a Catholic, and my sales guy, vice president's Jewish. My news director is a woman. My vice president of worldwide news gatherings, an African-American male. And my senior vice president is a guy I brought out of retirement who's just turned 70 years old. And that's the inner circle that does it. I don't know how it ended up that way. I just liked all of them, and so I hired them. And the 70-year-old comes in every morning and says, you know, I've been reading about these discrimination suits. He said, could you just call me a name and fire me? He said, I could get it. I could get it millions. He said, this is... The African-American guy, when I hired him, I said, do you think there's discrimination? He said, let me tell you a story. He said, there's a Polish guy and a Jewish guy and a black guy riding in a car. The car drives off the road, hits a tree. They all die. So they all go to heaven. They all line up. St. Peter's there. Polish guy's first in line. And the St. Peter says, look, you got to pass a test to get in here. Polish guy says, hey, man, I ain't too good at tests. He says, what's test? He says, spell God. He says, G-O-D. So you're in. Jewish guy steps up. He says, you know, you got to pass a test. Jewish guy says, hey, man, we've been through a lot. You know, the Holocaust, we got a lot of problem. We've been persecuted. So he says, look, I don't want to hear it. You got to pass the test. He says, what's the test? He said, G. He says, it's God. Spell God. He says, G-O-D. Black guy gets up. He says, you got to pass the test to get in here. Black guy says, hey, man, you know, we've been through slavery. We've been through, this is crazy. He says, I don't want to hear about discrimination. He says, you want to pass the test? You want to get in? He says, yeah. He says, all right. He says, spell chrysanthemum. So I figured he's my man. He's now the head of worldwide news gathering for Fox. Anybody who doesn't think there's been discrimination in this country is crazy or just missing the boat. We have tried to present fair and balanced news, and the only question I ask my people really is, can you present a fair story even if it doesn't come out the way you want? And he says, well, you got bias. I said, everybody's got bias. You don't have bias, you're brain dead. I mean, of course you got bias. The issue is, can you present the other point of view and try to get a dialogue going? And the reason that I have such respect for Reverend Jackson is over the years, he has a definite point of view, but he's never shied away from a fight. He's never shied away from a debate. He's perfectly willing to take on all comers and debate and argue and at the end of the day, shake hands and give you a hug and keep moving. And I always respect that. What we do at the Fox News Channel is we abide by all the standard guidelines. I used to work for an organization a couple of years, and they always make us go to these diversity seminars, you know, which nobody wanted to go to, and you'd have to sit through these diversity seminars. They made us go to 6 of these damn things. Finally, one day I went to a board meeting. I went in, and there were 31 middle-aged white guys So I leaned over to the chairman. I said, I think this diversity is really catching on. I said, "It's really catching on." Well, I'm no longer with that company, so I had to go somewhere else. What we do is we have a recruiting process for all of our direct reports, and they're asked to go out and recruit minorities, and we have set aside a little money. If they come in and they're talented and haven't got the training, we'll spend a little money to get them up to speed. In the end, everybody's got to hit the bar. Everybody's got to make it the same way, but we'll spend a little money to get them up to speed if they're talented. We belong to an organization called CATES, which is a minority cable industry group that brings up interns and so on through the organization. And mostly we're committed to fair news coverage on the air, and so we spend a good deal of time at that. I checked our numbers yesterday. I'd never checked them before. Our minority count at Fox is 24%. We started the business here in New York. I talked Rupert into opening the news channel right here in New York City because I felt this city needed a full-time 24-hour cable news operation. And he agreed, even though it cost a good deal more money. So we've hired about 1,000 employees, actually only 900 in New York, about 1,000 other cities, but of the 900, about 24, a little over 24% are minority. The average in the television industry, I think, is about 18%. So we're doing pretty well with it. So, at any rate, that's all I got to say. Thank you very much.
That's my friend with the other wing. You know, one of the things that we heard this choir for education, to build that bridge and to make a greater commitment to cover and make insurance coverage available. Roger's point about even the field, a report came out yesterday, an advertising report commissioned by the FCC. There'll be a conference that's coming Monday in New York, led by Pepper Sutton from NABOB, led by Reverend Sharpton and a group of multiracial, multicultural broadcasters. It's entitled When Number One Is Not Enough. When the station with number one get number 16 in revenues, number two gets 18 in revenues, when number one is not enough. And that's his point about this chrysanthemum. How you pronounce that? Chrysanthemum or something. The point is that this week the Jets played Denver. And if the Jets beat Denver and Denver goes to the Super Bowl, that would be illegitimate. There'd be something missing about that. And we experience over and over again the winner going home and the loser going to the Super Bowl. And that's what chrysanthemum is about. Thank you for that, Roger Ailes. I now want to bring forth a friend who has, well, he is deceptive in that his social style is of such. One can miss his seriousness and his commitment, for his success is beyond argument. When we opened this Wall Street project and we talked about it, he gave us space at 40 Wall Street, which was to make a statement about our having a presence there. And beyond that, in terms of reaching out and being inclusive, he's done that too. And created for many people a comfort zone when I ran for the presidency in 84 and 88. And many others thought it was either laughable or something to avoid. He came to our business meeting here in New York because he has this sense of the curious and a will to risk to make things better. And so aside from all of his style and his pizzazz, he's a serious person who's an effective builder of building for the builder of people. Last year he was a part of our workshop, of our panel workshop on what are the challenges and opportunities. And so a year later, Donald Trump, for a few minutes, challenges and opportunities to embrace the underserved communities. Donald Trump.
Well, it is an honor to be here, and I was with Jesse last year, and we had a lot of fun, and it was a little different. We had a real panel where you asked questions and everything, and we didn't do so much speaking, so I'm going to get off here very quickly because I want to hear some questions. Jesse started off by saying most of the wealth in this country is in the hands of a few, and I thought to myself, is that a bad thing? What's wrong with that, Jesse? But he did have an expression last year, and I was just telling Roger, he had an expression last year, the wall on wall must fall. And you haven't used it today, and I'm very disappointed in this, Jesse, because I thought it was a great expression. And I heard the expression about 14 times, and then he came to me at the end of the session, and he said, listen, I want some office space in your building on Wall Street, because the wall on wall will fall. And I said, it's okay, Jesse, I'll make a good deal with you. I'll get you some space. You'll pay about $40 a foot. And he said, no, I don't want to pay 40. I said, how about 30? No. It was the cheapest deal I ever made in the history of 40 Wall Street. Is that right? He got it for nothing. He's a very tough negotiator. We know that, right? Nah, he's a terrific guy. We love him, and I'm here for him. And the snow came, and I said, gee, nobody's going to show up, and look at this place, it's packed. I do want to say a couple of things. First of all, where's Percy? Oh, okay. I thought you left, Percy. That would have been terrible. I get up and you leave. I would have been insulted. But, you know, he's been a special friend of mine for 25 years, for a long time. And Percy was the borough president of Manhattan when I was really starting out, and he helped me so much on the Commodore Hotel, which he mentioned before, which became the Grand Hyatt, and so many other things. And he is really, and I listened to him speak, and I said to Roger and Roy, listen to those tones, listen to that voice. Have you heard that before, by the way? What a beautiful tone, and what a beautiful man, and we love him. You really were a big help to me right at the beginning, and I really appreciate it, and you've done some great jobs. So I just want to sort of acknowledge that. Now, another couple, I'm sitting here with this man, Roy. If you want to borrow money, but with him you have to pay it back. That's the best. But if you want to borrow money on Wall Street, you go see Roy, because there's nobody like him at Goldman Sachs. And if you do want to run for president, you see this guy. You're 3-0. And when he left Bush, you know what happened to Bush's last campaign, folks? It wasn't very pretty. And now we have President Clinton, who's coming tonight. And I guess you like President Clinton very much, right, Jesse? Huh? Stand up and say it, Jesse. Well, I'll just say a few words. I mean, Wall Street and New York City and this whole region is doing unbelievably well. I'm building a job on the West Side, which is the largest job ever approved by the New York City Planning Commission. You see it going up along the West Side Highway. It's almost 10 million square feet. It's 18 buildings, and it's really going to be something. We're building a building that you probably heard of recently. It's the tallest residential tower anywhere in the world. It's 90 stories. People aren't happy about the fact that I'm building a 90-story building in New York City, but it's an as-of-right. It's called an as-of-right building, meaning you can do it by zoning, and it's going to be truly magnificent, right directly across from the United Nations. We just bought the General Motors building. We just completed Trump International Hotel and Tower, which just yesterday got the Mobile 5-star award. Only 4 in the country got it for its whatever it is, and it's been a tremendous success. We're doing a lot of other things, and I will tell you, a large percentage of the people, and especially in construction, that are building these great jobs are black and minorities, and I'm very proud of it. We have close to 25%, and I think the number's going up, and they do a great job. There are no better builders than we have in New York, and a big percentage of that is black and minority folks. So I just want to thank everybody in the room for being here. I look forward to some questions. And then I don't know how we're ever going to leave this building today, because if you look outside, it is terrible. But we'll figure a way. There's always a way. And thank you, Jesse, and congratulations.
And with all of that wealth, Trump wants a free ticket to the fair tonight. Freebie. The question remains over and over again, how is the South End of the same island between the same two rivers, connected by the same bridges, growing, and on the other end, quite the opposite. For on the other end of the same island, there is no shopping mall. There's not one car dealership on the other end of the same island, in the same city, between the same two rivers, connected by the same two bridges. What must we do to green line the scorched earth part of the same island? What must we do to green line, red line America? Whatever it is that's required to green line the northern end of Manhattan will also apply to Appalachia and to Kansas and to America. And if we green line the red line area, we will then educate our youth and stabilize our families and build school industrial complexes with hope and not jail industrial complexes with despair. We brought these persons here today who are the builders and movers and shakers to engage in some measure of dialogue about what's required. What would be required to get Donald Trump to build a building just 45 stories high, half that high on the other end of the same island? It must be something that's missing in the formula. We want to explore during these 2 days what's missing and then figure out how to close that gap. One of the young men who was a breakthrough of the breakthrough generation comes from Athens, Georgia. Father never made more than $7 a week. But by sheer will and the determination, went to the University of Georgia, the first African American to graduate from the law school at the University of Georgia. A will to make a dent, a will to make a difference. A man who has never forsaken the values that brought him success, the people. On the company called EnviroTest, every time you went through the highway for the emissions tests, the machinery doing the checking was Chester Davenport's machinery. Chester Davenport sold that company a few months ago for $600 million. He is now unemployed. He doesn't have a job. He sold his company. Chester Davenport, the challenges and opportunities. He's now trying to get one of the spinoffs, one of the telecom negotiations we're involved in. And of course, when he walked in, the man asked him about his qualifications. Except Chester's record in business development and wealth accumulation is greater than the man who was interviewing him. As we break barriers and say that just as behind Jackie Robinson there was Hank Aaron and Willie Mays, behind Reggie Lewis, beloved Reggie Lewis, there's Chester Davenport. There's a generation of African American, Latino American women able to step up to the plate, just need the opportunity. Brothers and sisters, one of the premier businessmen in America today, Chester Davenport.
I want to thank Jesse for that elaborate introduction, and fellow panel members of Reverend Jackson's staff, and in case I missed anyone, all the saints and sinners in the room. I asked Reverend Jackson just before coming up here, what should I talk about? He said probably about 5 minutes. He said, however, if you come after Roger and Donnie Trump, it's probably only 1 minute because he'll take up all the time. So I want to thank everybody who's ever done anything for me to help me do whatever I've been able to do. We particularly in terms of accessing the capital markets, I guess Jesse Jackson reminds me of another Jesse, Jesse James, who, when they asked Jesse James, well, why do you always, rob banks? He says, well, that's where they keep all the money. So Jesse Jackson says he's down here on Wall Street because that's where they keep all the money. Is that right, Jesse? Yes. That's where you are. So basically, what we've been able to do is to access capital, and again, the capital's down here on Wall Street. We dealt with our friends from Goldman Sachs several years ago to raise equity money and IPOs, debt money in the high yield market that Donald Trump knows so well with his casinos down in Atlantic City. And I guess my message here today, and I will make it short, is that there is capital here on Wall Street, and to many of you who are looking to do whatever you're trying to do in your business, I would suggest that you come down here, since that's where it is. And I can say to you that if you have a good idea and a good thought, and you can show these guys down here how they can make money, they will, give you the money. And unfortunately, you do have to pay it back sometimes. But in any event, I'd like to, again, leave some time for questions, and we've been able to do well. I think all of you could, do very well. I'll say one thing about diversity in the workplace. And when we bought and put together these companies, we ended up with maybe 4,000 or 5,000 employees, and my diversity plan was, very simple. Our anti-discrimination plan in our company, it's very simple, is that if I thought, since I was a controlling shareholder and the CEO and the chairman and any other title that I wanted, that if anybody was discriminating, I would just fire them. And if the person who was supervising them knew that they were discriminating, I would fire them. So it didn't take long for people to stop, discriminating. And I think that if discrimination, if the larger companies, really did that, then you wouldn't have discrimination, because if people thought they were going to lose their jobs. Now, people understood that I was somewhat, as Jesse calls me, sometimes kind of crazy, but I would fire people, and everybody knew that. So you end up with someone like me saying, okay, we don't discriminate in this company. And if I find out about it, the person that discriminates gets fired, the person that knew about it gets fired, the person that supervises them gets fired, and I'm the only guy left in the room, and I will turn the lights out. So I think that's really one of the messages that I'd like to leave about diversity. If the guys who are CEOs and chairmen of these companies are really sincere, if they were to put that message out, everybody would understand. Thanks, Jesse.
That is one way to do it. Break the law, you don't need no judges, just go to jail. The point is that Chester has made a case that we should not miss. If there is offered to Wall Street mutually beneficial plans where both stand to grow, then there's a reasonable chance of getting a deal. If you want fish, go to the river. Want rabbits, go to the bushes. Want money, come where? Come where? And so in this stage of development, we want to access capital. We want to access credit. We want to access debt. We want to access training to facilitate this relationship. And in a real sense, Chester Davenport It's a long ways from the rural side of Athens, Georgia, to selling a company for $600 million. And then with the sensitivity to include the others as he goes and as he grows. The last person before having our Q&A about engaging in some of this is that Alexis Herman from Mobile, Alabama, who is now the, if you will, the Chief Executive Officer of the Department of Labor. She is the Secretary of Labor. But before that, she was into job training and into diversity training. And when we talk about inclusion, Alexis, it seems that many good people say, I want to do the right thing, they say, but we don't know how. You're in the business of showing people how to be inclusive and advantages of being inclusive. Alexis Herman, Secretary of Labor.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you and good morning. Thank you very, very much. Good morning. Let me first of all pay tribute to our leader, the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson, and thank him for the opportunity to be back here at the windows of the world to talk about what it is we can do to open even wider again the doors of opportunity. And I could not help but make a note, Mr. Trump, when you said that you thought because of the snow that perhaps you would come into an empty room this morning and no one would be here, that they would somehow not be able to find their way. Well, I just wanted to say to you that when the Reverend Jackson calls, you come. By boat, by train, by plane on slippery landings as mine just did at LaGuardia Airport, because if you don't come, he will find you. He will call your name in public the next time he sees you. And of course, he will never ever let you forget it. So we never miss the opportunity when the Reverend Jackson calls. And Chester Davenport, I want to thank you for being such an eloquent spokesperson for the Department of Labor this morning. I wish that I could subscribe that policy to writing. But indeed, so that we might have the opportunity to move quickly to discussion, let me just say that I've always said that obviously the best employment policy, is, in my view, is also the best investment policy, and that is diversify your portfolio. And when you ask the question, what are the secrets to success? What are the ingredients to success? I think that is something that probably we could talk about for the rest of our time here today. But I would briefly give you perhaps 5 or 6 points for your consideration as a part of our discussion this morning. And certainly in my experience throughout the years in working these issues, and even now certainly as Secretary of Labor, as I've worked with many companies and many chief executive officers, there are models, there are elements that certainly you can lift up and recognize that these are ingredients for success. And I think the first ingredient is exactly what Chester spoke to, and that is leadership. Successful companies have leaders who walk the talk, who model the kind of behavior in their own environment that they want to see, and they hold their organizations accountable. And people recognize that in being held accountable, that there are benefits, that there are rewards, as well as there are punishments when things are not adhered to in terms of organizational standards. The second thing that I would point to is that you see an organization where the policies, the procedures, and the practices are in place and are rooted in the culture. It's good today that we have so many companies that have the policies and procedures right, but oftentimes the practices are very inconsistent. And we have to do a better job of making sure that those practices are in fact modeled throughout the organization. I'd say that there's a recognition that you need to have open communication. It's okay to talk about it. It's something that we do value, and there is not a feeling of tightness about the debate, about the conversation, and it is something where you don't feel or sense that there's a backlash because you're in the room having the conversation. I'd also say that there is a clear recognition that this is in the self-interest of the business, that there is real business payout, that there is a clear benefit to ensuring that you have a diversified workforce, but not just a workforce that is diversified, but also your products and your services, so that it is modeled throughout the organization. And lastly, I would just say that it's a process. It's not an event. It is something that is ongoing, that requires hard work, and it doesn't end with this discussion today or tomorrow, but we recognize that we're in this for the long haul, and there is real commitment to staying with it. You know, the wealthy oilman J. Paul Getty said that from his vantage point that there are 3 secrets to success. You rise early, you work hard, and you strike oil. Well, I would say in this arena that there are also 3 secrets to success. One is clearly always being up to rising to the challenge, being willing to work hard, but also being willing to strike partnerships. And in my view, that is what this Wall Street project is accomplishing, and we congratulate and salute you for your work and all of you for being here. Thank you very much.
For the distinguished Chair of the House of Ways and Means Committee in exile, Congressman Charlie Rangel. Now as we engage in about 20 minutes of Q&A, while we hear the challenges rehearsed over and over again, we've not really heard the story told of the advantages in expanding the marketplace. That's why I gave the example of the pastor whose church I spoke at a few days ago, who has had $800,000 in CDs for the last 9 months. And it means that those on Wall Street, if they knew where he was, they would go find him. And if he knew where they were, he would go find them. And there is this gulf, therefore, between that body of money and its culture and these body of workers. And while this group looks at the market, this group looks at the lottery. And this group has more confidence in the lottery than they do in the market, and more confidence in the gambling boat than in the bank because of this cultural divide. It is in nobody's interest for this group to have this money, this market, and this talent and not be a part of this process. Because in one sense, you're going to pay those on the south side of Manhattan are going to pay to leave the north side underutilized, or they're going to profit from utilizing it. Either going to pay to utilize the talent, going to benefit from utilizing the talent and tapping the capital and cultivating the market, are going to pay not to. And so beyond the morality of the matter, it just makes sense to take a new look at how we build a bridge. So now you've heard the speakers and give their expressions for about 20 minutes. Let's have questions relative to the issue of challenges and opportunities in the marketplace. Questions to the panelists. Yes, sir.
My name is Neelan Youngblood, and I have a question for Mr. Zuckerberg.
Tell me where you're from, Dr. Youngblood.
Dallas, Texas.
Yes.
Anyway, on the issue of Goldman Sachs, it's great that Goldman has made the commitment that it's made. with regard to empowering minorities in the business community. I wanted to know specifically as it relates to Goldman Sachs, not only what we do outside, but what we do inside our firm is as important, if not more important. How many black partners are there at Goldman Sachs? That's number one. Number two, in terms of the proposed IPO that's pending for Goldman Sachs, what commitment have you made to have minority investment banking firms as co-managers on the deal? And then number three, Goldman has raised billions of dollars in private equity and in real estate. What commitment, both on the fund-to-fund side as well as on the private equity side, has there been made with regard to putting that capital to work in the African-American community?
Jesse said we only had 20 minutes, so I...
Spend them all.
Let me answer the second question first. You know, going public is a process. It's a process that really has not begun. It did begin. It was withdrawn. It will begin again, hopefully, but it has not. And I think when it does, when that process does begin, then decisions will be made as to who's in the deal, et cetera, et cetera. But it's premature. We will, as we always try to do the best and the right things when we do these financings. When I got here this morning and I met Chester Davenport, the first thing he said was that, you know, he said Goldman Sachs took one of my companies public. And I felt good about that. And I felt, you know, there was immediately some chemistry between Chester and me because we had raised money for one of his companies. I think that our policy is, and always has been, to raise capital for companies that are deserving of capital, companies with good ideas, companies with good balance sheets and good income statements, et cetera, et cetera. We have never been, you know, most of our corporate clients today are big companies. I think the exception is some of the technology companies. But I did feel very proud and good when Chester said what he said. I asked him, he said it was in 1993. The third question you asked, what was the third question? I'm sorry. Yeah, what the commitment of our funds are. I think, I don't know how many minority companies we've invested in between Whitehall and GS Capital. Perhaps I should know, but I do not. So I don't know if there's any or if there's 10% or 20%. I just don't know the answer to the question, I'm sorry. But the performance of these funds has been terrific. And I think that our obligation is both to perform and to do the right thing. And I think we're very, very aware of that. Now, in terms of your first question, I'm going to pass the buck to Bruce, Bruce Larson, who's here today, who I know knows all the data on diversity in our partnership. We have about 220 PMDs and about 500 managing directors at Goldman Sachs. Now, could you help me out, Bruce?
We have one African-American partner and in addition to that, 3 additional African-American managing directors.
So 4. So you heard the answer. Yes, the answer was there were 4, I think you said, out of 500. Now, would you, if you included minority groups overall, not just African Americans, what would the number look like then, Bruce? I'll repeat the answer. It's 10% of the total, if you include women. Okay. Well, you heard the number. The number he said was 4 African Americans and about 10% if you include all minorities and women.
Thank you very much. The point is that as we do our research, the starting point is where the companies are, and the challenge is to take them to where they need to go. A part of the point that the lectures made was they can no longer say they can't find the talent because we can. They can no longer say they can't find competent business people because they're here. And so long as Wall Street had the comfort zone of our detachment, those kind of numbers could exist. It was just last year, for the first time, Wall Street closed down honoring Dr. King's birthday because of our presence. And these numbers are going to change because 2 reasons. A, we're not going away. And B, it's profitable. for them to change. We are not going away. Say, we're not going away. And it's profitable because there is more market, more money, and more talent than they're using. Everything is relative. Baseball was relatively a good game until they allowed Jackie Robinson to play. And then Hank Aaron, and then Willie Mays. It simply got better. Football was relatively a good game until Jim Brown and then Gale Sayers could play. Basketball with George Allen, his one-hand push shots, was relatively a good game. Till Bill Russell came along and Michael Jordan. So Wall Street's doing relatively well. It's doing relatively well excluding valuable talent. It's doing relatively well excluding money and market and talent that is closer and at lesser risk than its investment in Indonesia, Taiwan, and South Korea. And therefore, we're gonna do some redefining here. And so our partners need not feel shame about these bad records. Change them. Don't feel shame, change them. Let's change them. And change them in ways that are mutually beneficial. Is that the operating word? Mutually beneficial? Next. And make these very tight because we got to leave in 15 minutes to start our workshops. Yes, sir. Identify yourselves, please.
John Templeton from San Francisco. Question to Secretary Herman. Only 175 of the more than 6,000 major companies in Silicon Valley even filed the EEO-1 report. What will it take for the Department of Labor to bring the resources to ensure compliance with the civil rights laws and keep the digital divide from growing wider?
Please.
Well, first of all, the EEO-1 reports are the purview of the EEOC, not the Department of Labor in terms of who has the oversight responsibility, but more broadly in terms of the question of resources being needed generally to continue to fight anti-discrimination efforts in the workplace. For the first time in the President's budget this year, the 99 budget, we saw the first increase in putting additional resources into anti-discrimination efforts. We continue to press this issue, and I believe what it is going to take, quite frankly, are three things. First, I think that with the existing resources, that we have to vigorously enforce the law and to send a clear message that we are still in business to do that, particularly in growth industries and areas where there is continued opportunity. Secondly, I believe that we have to have a more aggressive public strategy, particularly in terms of our congressional relations today, to say that discrimination is still real and that it still exists in the marketplace, and that as long as it still exists, that we have to have resources and initiatives to continue to fight those efforts. And thirdly, I think that we have to be able to use the bully pulpit more in forums like these, public officials like myself and others, to put the spotlight on areas where we know that we're going to have growth, that we can open up those new areas to make sure that we create a broad awareness. And I think the Silicon Valley and the high-tech area is a very good example of that.
Thank you.
As we pursue this, and we're going through an education process, Charlie, there's one scripture that speaks about giants having grasshopper complexes. Many of us are still approaching Wall Street with a minority complex. And I'm trying to get us to change our minds. We bring to the table not complaints about, merely complaints about they're discriminating against the lockdown, but what they are losing by doing it. How dumb it is for them to do it. How unprofitable it is to do it, and advantages in not doing it. It's as if we are bringing to Wall Street something to sell. We bring to the table money, market, and talent. Are we bringing enough organization to show them the absence of our money, our market, our talent? And that is a negotiating position from an even playing field. A part of our work will be research, finding out what's missing. Not only are they missing blacks or browns, they're also missing the money, the market, and the talent of those who are locked out. And we bargain, we negotiate with that, and that creates the basis for a new and different relationship. When South Korea comes and says, invest your automotive factory in my country, and we offer them export bank, import bank, OPIC, long-term loans, South Korea convinced GM they had a market. And guess what? Last year, America sold South Korea 8,000 cars. Now, can Harlem, a Bed-Stuy, compete with the South Korean market for American cars? Think so. If we are bargaining for manufacturing and not just begging for a dealership. Say amen, somebody. It's about, we have to see this thing differently to raise the right questions. Yes, sir.
This is for Mr. Davenport. I understand that there were a group of African-American venture capitalists that helped you initially capitalize your business. Would you share with us who those companies are and were, because now you've exited and they've exited? And would you also talk about the talent that is currently in that industry that a lot of people in this country aren't aware of, particularly the people on Wall Street?
Yeah, when we put these companies together through various leverage acquisitions prior to going to the public marketplace, and there's a group now that's called TSG Ventures that is run by Cleve Christoph, that was one of the original investors, and another group up in Boston called UNC Ventures that was run by Ed Duggar. And Ed may be here, but I think if he's not here, he'll be here today. So basically, the first company that we bought was like, I think, a $30 million deal. And we put all these companies together to do what Reverend Jackson was saying, which is to sell them later for the number that he mentioned.
What was the number?
Well, actually, it was $650 million. But I mean, that's basically what happened.
You're so casual about it. Yeah.
My name's Melody Sands, and I'm from Athens, Ohio, which is the best kept secret in America, but thanks to Reverend Jackson's efforts, I think you all are going to learn more about Appalachia. And my question is to Donald Trump and other investors, actually all of the investors in this room. We would like to know specifically what we can do in Appalachia to get your attention, your investment, and your enthusiasm for the fantastic ideas and businesses and organizations that we have down there.
Well, Jesse wants me in Harlem, and you want me in Appalachia, so I don't know what the hell. I don't know. What do I do, Charlie? Look at his legend. He sits there, doesn't say anything. Charles Rangel, he's a legend. Come on, stand up, Charles. Will you? It's terrible. You should be up here speaking, Charles. Well, certainly it's something we'd love to take a look at, but I've got my own problems in New York. I can't get a 90-story building built. Maybe I need your help, Charles. I hear it's a tremendous place. I hear it's got great opportunity, and I'm sure it's going to be successful. And if you align yourself with Jesse, I have no doubt about it at all. Good luck.
Charlie, Congressman Rangel.
At Donald Trump's invitation, I never really became so popular until I became the ranking member of the Ways and Means Committee. And I'm telling you, my personality has just blossomed. And if I become chairman, there's just no limit to love and affection that I'll be getting from Wall Street. You know, when I first heard what we were doing in Europe after World War II, I said, what a great country that we'd do this for these poor folks that got bombed. When they went to Japan, I said, gosh, I didn't know we cared that much. Then they started dealing with Mexico. I said, this is absolutely astounding. Now that I know we're going to Africa, I said, it just makes a lot of sense. Having said that, Donald, I think that most investors want to know how they get the best return on their investment, and this is what Reverend Jackson is talking about. In order to do that, there are a variety of things that we have done to encourage American investors to put that money where we want it. Whether it used to be Europe, whether it was in Asia, whether it was the billions that we guaranteed in Mexico, or whether hopefully it's in Africa, we encourage by giving guarantees, by giving credits. Reverend Jackson has come up with a remarkable idea in saying that if we can do this for developing countries so that now they are super economic countries, why in areas that we are building jails and putting people in jail who are not productive, can we not bring in the same type incentives so not only investors can feel good in doing the moral thing, as we all did in rebuilding Japan and Europe, but so that you can make certain that you get better than a fair advantage when you make your investment. So when the president comes and when Secretary Rubin comes, please share with them what it would take for you to take a look at the options that you have, and whether it's Appalachia or whether it's Harlem, you would feel as better Americans knowing that you are creating consumers here in America, and at the same time you'll be able to get more than a fair return on the investment. The reason I'm so interested is that I have every reason to believe that the President and Secretary Rubin will be bringing it to the Ways and Means Committee, where it would be greeted with open arms. Thank you.
One of the issues we shall raise here, beyond the issue of, Danny, of the historical discrimination factor, whether it's gender or race, the kind of east-west dialogue to which we are accustomed, there's an even different set of questions on what's risk, what's the investment worthy, how can I get my return, assuming that the person running the bank is from Appalachia or from Harlem. What would provide an Appalachian banker the incentive or the disincentive to bank or not bank there? Which raises the question beyond skin color and beyond region, the question of vehicle. How can we invest in Indonesia, Taiwan, South Korea? Couldn't be about race or language or religion. It must be something else. We make available to Eastern European allies $250 million to one country, 40-year loans, 0.75%, first payment due in 10 years. Plus OPIC, plus Export-Import Bank, plus long-term interest loans called stimulus package, and IMF to hedge against risk. All we want for urban and rural America is what we do for others. And we should not disparage what we do for them because it's to our advantage to do it, because if they become more secure and more stable and they develop, we expand, and so both of us grow. But somehow we have lost the capacity to apply those same principles at home. So if we see 500 folks standing in a line in Eastern Europe, we figure something's wrong with the system. If those 500 are standing in line in Paducah, Kentucky, we figure something wrong with the people. They don't love Jesus, or had sex too early, or drank too much liquor. Something's wrong with them, not the system. And so that is in part what we're addressing, the question of vehicles that go abroad to be applied at home. Yes, sir. Two more, then we're going to workshops.
Yes, I just want to give some good news that resulted from your conference last year. A couple of months after your conference, I received a call from an investment banker that was tied into Arthur Cheecher's fish and chip company. My name is Thomas Lopez Pierre, and I hail from the village of Harlem, where I'm glad to see that my great congressman is here. And because of this conference, this individual thought that the company needs to be in Harlem and they need to find an Afro-American partner to come there. And after discussions,
I was selected as that Afro-American partner, and I explained to them that Upper Manhattan is bigger than Harlem, and so I am pleased to announce that early last year I signed a joint venture to open 8 Arthur Treacher restaurants in Upper Manhattan. Now, I point this out because it was made quite clear to me that the reason this was able to occur was because of 2, in this case, men, and that was the Reverend Jesse Jackson and the Honorable Charles Rangel. The work that he has done on the empowerment zone has given business leaders a new image of Harlem and Upper Manhattan, and has encouraged them to come running to Harlem to make money. And some have been socially sensitive to recognize the need that they need partners in this endeavor. And I can't tell you how grateful I am, Congressman, of your work. You didn't do it specifically for me, but I will tell you that I am going to be a millionaire because of you. And I know I will be writing campaign contributions to the chairman of Ways and Means.
I want you to, that may be some technical, ethical questions about giving money to Charlie, but I don't operate. but let me say this for the. I don't operate on the same constraints.
Let me say this for the Reverend, that I am not only here for the conference, I'm also here for tonight's dinner. So we know how much that came in for. So you got before the Congressman. And the last thing that I want to say is that all of you have been role models for many of us in my generation. We call it in Harlem the Rangel, Jesse, Percy Sutton, and yes, Donald Trump mentors. 2 things that we've learned from him is that we may not own half of New York City by the time we die, but we will leave it to our children so that our children can become Donald Trumps. And so I'm building the Lopez Pierre organization. And the second thing that we learned from Mr. Trump was the importance of a good prenup. So I am that. Thank you.
Ooh, boy, this conference is heating up, guys. Just two more and then we'll break. 1, and then Mr. Blaylock. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Lila Pettit, and I'm in economic development for the city of Dayton. I'm a commercial lender. And I have a comment and I have a couple questions. My comment is that there are just not enough minorities in economic development. I go all around the country and I've interacted with a lot of individuals, and I don't see any minorities learning about financing and doing real estate development projects. And my question is to our Honorable Secretary of Labor, is there anything that we can do to get the word out about economic development and how to analyze credits and things like that to our minorities who are interested in starting businesses and assisting people who are interested in doing the same?
Secretary.
There's a lot that we can do on this front, and I think that if we begin to model some of the principles of Mary McLeod Bethune, who said, each one teach one, each one bring one. When we have the opportunities in these kinds of forums to reach out and to bring others with us, we shouldn't undermine or minimize, rather, I think the importance of just the individual contacts and outreach. I am personally working on an effort with our own historically black colleges to start there as a principle in terms of trying to see what it is we can do to encourage more of our own students to think about finance, to think about economic development, and to broaden our own horizons in terms of what it is we are teaching our young people today. And then thirdly, I think that in much the same way that African American organizations have come together on many issues that impact the black community and adopted single cause goals across organizations. We did it, for instance, for the black teen pregnancy rate, and we've now seen that come dramatically down. I think that we have to step up to the plate and to begin to lift up the whole issue of economic empowerment in our community, and to follow, quite frankly, the lead of what Reverend Jackson is doing here, and to get more organizations to embrace it as a principle, to hold workshops, to hold seminars, and to say no matter what else the mission is, no matter what else the charter is, that this is going to be a broad community goal that we will all embrace and that we will all begin to train and to develop on.
Thank you.
Let me also say that you often hear people say now that we used to have all these black businesses back in the days of segregation. At least we had our own businesses, and now we don't. We should dispel that notion. That is not true. We have more trained people than ever. We have more businesses than ever. Let me attempt to take out the nugget of what I think is the pain in that ancient statement. It is that when we were smaller, at least there was a communications factor that is gone. You could come to New York, if you could just get the Red Rooster, 125th Street, you had a sense of the flow and who was about to make a move. If you just got the Simpsons in Washington, or the Beamans in Atlanta, or Gaston's in Birmingham, or Duke Chase in New Orleans, or 63rd and College in Chicago, the extent to which Wesson and Adams down in LA, there was a sense that the community had a sense of who the players were. Those streets, by and large, have been dispersed. So there is no center there. One advantage of coming to this conference is to get recentered. You're going to meet people here today who are doing unbelievable things. You would never bump into Chester Davenport, who just sold a company for $650 million. You will not bump into people who are here today who are building investment vehicles, because there's not the sense. I find on Wall Street so many bright people who just don't know each other and therefore cannot work, cannot network, and cannot partner. You would not bump into an ally in Appalachia, because the media has told us that Appalachia is the enemy of Harlem, and Harlem the enemy of Appalachia. The fact is, Harlem and Appalachia got everything in common and the same needs, and must therefore relate together. So while here, we're also going to be transforming some relationships, dispelling some myths, things like most black people are not poor. Most poor people are not black. Most poor people are not black. Most black people are not poor. Most poor people are not on welfare. They work every day. Most poor people are white and female and young. But whether white or black or brown, everybody counts. A part of our mission here is to break through the common assumptions that are neither accurate nor fair as we open up our mental marketplace to go after the physical marketplace. We got to believe the market is there and go for it. Last question for Mr. Blaylock, a statement, and then we shall go to our workshops.
Thank you. And thank you. I'm Ron Blaylock, Blaylock & Partners Investment Banking Firm.
Speak up, Mr. Blaylock.
I'm Ron Blaylock, Blaylock & Partners, New York-based investment banking firm. A question to the whole panel, and as well as a comment.
One.
Thank you. Roy, I will tell you on your IPO, and I know it's still in the planning stages, but you are in a significant leadership position to make a statement there. We model our firm after Goldman Sachs. We preach Goldman Sachs. That's what we want to be. I have utmost respect for you and your organization and its partners, but your leadership role is significant, and I'll speak to that because of Fox. Fox had a IPO spin out this year. The fees probably paid to Wall Street was roughly $10 million. They had a number of minority investment banking firms on the deal. The fees paid to the minority investment banking firms, it was so insignificant when Fortune magazine called me up and said, how did you guys do in the Fox deal? I didn't even know it was that insignificant, to the point where if it's going to be that insignificant, we shouldn't even be there. And it's not a question of giving out something, it's earning it. We can add, and I'm not speaking of myself and my firm, I'm speaking to all minority women-owned investment banking firms. It has to be a significant role. Otherwise, it's a form of welfare, it's a form of, it's nothing earned, it's not helping us build our businesses, and again, it has to be significantly earned. Thank you.
One of the things we want to do as we prepare to close, want to respond to that just in some measure. In our workshops today, Laylock, these kind of pointed questions and concerns will be discussed. What one of our missions here is to face off with each other in new and different ways. These leaders will be here today in dialogue because the next step is to set up appointments and to negotiate. Last year, after these sessions, some of the resultant negotiations changed relationships forever to the better. And I'm sharing with Doris that the questions you are raising today may not be the questions on the EEOC questionnaire. These are the real questions from the real world. And I think one point that Blaylock was trying to make is that these economic activists want the chance to succeed or fail. They want to feel good about having played by the rules and won by the rules. And if the opportunity is there, we're going to have a lot more winners and a lot more market. For our panelists who've shared with us today, let's give them a hand, shall we please? Give our panelists a hand, will you please? All of them. Before going to our workshops now, and we will break for workshops now. Just 1 second, please. Just 1 second. We have, for some of us, our press conference here at noontime. We eat in this room. I think it's 12:30 in this room. And workshops this afternoon. There'll be some significant announcements, I might add, Charlie, at noontime. But tonight at 7:30, our gala on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. President Clinton is our special guest. Dr. Maya Angelou and Dick Grasso, our honorary co-chairpersons. We're going to have a grand celebration tonight. Somewhere with us today is Congressman from Georgia, Sanford Bishop. Let's give Sanford Bishop a big hand, shall we please? From Illinois by way of South Carolina, Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. And the ever-growing popular man from Harlem, Charlie Rangel. And from Hawking College in Nelsonville, Ohio, Dr. John Light. Shall we stand together? Chi-Chi, just the breakdown of workshops and where, just before we move, just need someone from the staff to give us exactly where the workshops are. Simone? Telecommunications trends for the new millennium, consolidation, growth, and opportunity. Pinnacle North, 107th floor. The telecommunications trends, consolidation, growth, and opportunity. We have been negotiating with these companies, among other things, for spinoffs and inclusions in the new economy of telecommunications. Making the leap from boutique to mainstream, increasing the size of the pension fund allocation to minority asset management firms. I might add on telecommunications, it's Leo Hendry, Chairman, President of TCI, Jim Cullen, President, COO, Bell Atlantic, Royce Caldwell, President, SBC Operation, Jack Field, CEO, 21st Century, Robert Anazieta, President, AT&T Business Services. Making the leap from boutique to mainstream, Mark Kazanov, President of Progress Investment Management Company, H. Carl McCall, New York State Comptroller, Jim Hill, raise your hand, Jim Hill, President, National Association of State Treasurers, Larry Gray, President, Gray & Company, John Rogers, President and Chief Investment Officer, Ariel Capital Management. Corporate finance, establishing business relationships with the corporate treasury departments Pinnacle South, 107th floor. Moderator Albert Grace, Principal Loop Capital Markets. Eric Weeks, Treasury Illinois Power. Andrea Robertson, Assistant Treasurer R. Donnelly. Christopher Williams, President, CEO, Williams Capital. And Richard Pelkey, Ameritech. Options for minorities in the food and beverage industry. Is that now, Greg? Yeah. That is now. Am I correct about that? Moderator Greg Calhoun, Calhoun Enterprises. Michelle Hoskins, Michelle Foods. Ron Burkle, UK Companies. Brock Leach, Chairman. Frito-Lay, Virgis Colbert, Miller Brewing. John Clark, Reggio's Pizza. Henry Baines, Shop Save Marcus. Mark Smith, Executive VP. A Stop and Shop Supermarket. Appalachia, building bridges to money and market. Liberty, A.B. 107th floor. Moderator Dr. Jesse White, Federal Co-Chair, Appalachia Regional Commission. Honorable Dan Glickman, Agriculture Secretary, will be there. Jerry Ricketts, CEO, Kentucky Highlands Investment Corporation. Steve Swartz, Director, Hawkins Center for Business and Industry. June Holly, Director of Appalachian Center for Economic Network. And lastly, the church and the marketplace. Moderator Eugene Duffy, Executive Vice President, Paradigm Asset Management. And Norman E. DeMoores, Chairman, National Credit Union Administration. Reverend James Meeks, pastor of Salem Baptist Church. These are respective workshops and places now. It seems all of them are on the 107th floor. Thank you very much. See you at 12:30. Huh? Carl McCall, State Treasurer. Give him a hand. Carl McCall. Thank you, Carl.
How you doing, my brother? Good to be here, man. Listen, good news. Harris Jones, good to see you, man. Yeah, we're ready to go. Oh, listen, it gets better. Chris, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you,
Our coverage of the Wall Street Project continues in a minute with a discussion on the future of the telecommunications industry with presidents of various telecom companies. After that, Reverend Jackson and his son, Congressman